Okay, good afternoon, folks. And thanks to Martin for having me come on and report out. My name is Jim Newman. I'm a Type 1 logistics chief that came out of California. I've been out on an IMT Cal Fire team for about 10 years. I currently serve as a support logistics on Martin's area command team. As you know, we talked about it earlier that area commanders have a certain amount of people they can take. But if it gets a little complex, they can bring in support folks to help out their mission, and that's what I do for Martin. So what Martin was unable to get down to the area command incident commander meeting last week in Phoenix, and so he, since I'm down here in Central California, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to Phoenix, and I was able to get down there and be the eyes and ears of Martin, and just kind of start paying attention to any logistical issues that came up or comments that you all might be interested in. So I took some notes, and I'm going to kind of walk through them right now. As we've heard before, there are 3 area command teams were established for the 2015 fire season. The area commanders are Duggar Hughes, Boo Walker, and Bill Van Bruggen. Area commands are made up of the area commander, the assistant area commander planning, assistant area commander logistics, and area commander aviation coordinator. Those are the core folks, and they can bring along, as I said, some help and specialists, technical specialists, all that type of thing. So they are lean and mean, and I try to keep them fairly small. They serve for the agency administrator, and working for them, working with the span of control issues that may come up on complex incidents. What else about? So they met the first day by themselves a week ago Monday, and they spent the whole day kind of figuring out where area command stands nationally. As you remember, there was only one activation of an area command team last season. It was a very short area command activation, maybe 3 days. They tried to figure out, there was a lot of complex fires last year, and they're trying to figure out why area command was not used as much. And so they spent the better part of the day trying to figure out how to come up with an answer to that. And what they figured out is that they need to do a better job of marketing themselves. It turns out the incident commanders like having area command. They know the role of area command is not to fight their fires, if it were. They were more involved in critical resource allocation on a very complex fire or incident. What they figured out is they're having troubles with the agency administrators understanding the role of area commander, and they're troubled by giving up control of their incidents, which obviously is not going to happen. The area command works for the agency administrator. So they spent the better part of a day trying to figure out different techniques how to educate the folks that they work for. Okay. During that day, they were given updates by different functions. Steve Cage gave an NMAC update. He talked about the Imt rotation, both Type 1 and Type 2, is going to be watched very closely this year. It turns out there were a lot of teams that were activated a lot last year, and some teams weren't activated at all. And so trying to figure out how to more equitably rotate teams in to keep them fresh and to keep their quals up. As you know, if we don't keep our quals up by being activated every few years, we lose our ability to respond. And so they're going to watch that very closely. And if one team is getting hit pretty hard, like we saw last year, they're going to move them out of the rotation and move another team in to keep everybody current and proficient at their job. They're going to focus a lot of attention on the Type 2 teams. We heard earlier today that the Type 2 teams, IMT teams, are going to be back, and we're not going to lose them. But they've gone from 600 down to 200 in the United States. Quite a dramatic loss of IMT Type 2s. And it has to go with all that stuff we talked about earlier today, the EIM issues, all those things. So they're going to work on exercising those teams a bit more and try to get people to promote into those teams. Steve Gage also said we almost lost the FTP site. It almost went away last year due to some issues they were having, but it is back. They saved it, and that's the file transfer protocol site that we use to store our what do I want to say? Our fire reports, our IAPs, all our documents. Well, they figured out how to save that FTP site. We're going to use it again this year. It's going to be password protected, they told us, but your ROS password would still get you in. So if you have a ROS password, you'll be able to access that site for different documents. Steve also mentioned that a lack of frequencies has become an issue, both on the federal side and on the state's side. They're working with the military to get, or at least borrow, more frequencies for this upcoming year. So that was a logistical issue. As Martin has reported out earlier today, the catering contracts were signed, but must now go through a review period. We heard about that issue before. And he just touched basically on the air resources for this upcoming fire season are going to be very similar to what we had last year. Both the next generation and 1 and 2 are still progressing. We'll see those out there. But there won't be a ton of aircraft in the skies, but if you need them, you get them. Also, during that first day, they referenced a new document that I hadn't been aware of. It was ICS 206 WF for Wildland Fire. That's the new version of the ICS 206 medical plan. And that came out of that Dutch Creek fatality, I believe, in 2008. Jan Peterson earlier today did a nice presentation on that form where we got to look at it. So that was an interesting thing that the ICs and the ACs were able to touch on that new form. Then during that next day, Joe Stutler was able to, out of Oregon, was able to talk about the EIM update. Now we've heard various speakers today talk about this this program. It's back, it's alive. I had a good presentation this morning about it. But the two things I noted that they mentioned was the NWCG memo 14-014 and 14-021 are out there on the NWCG website. And if you want to follow what they're thinking about, whether the board of directors is for involving incident management, you can tune to those two documents. The 14-021 talks about the Wildland Fire Qualification System update we heard about earlier today. And just as a side note, that's not only exciting for the federal system, but our state folks are struggling with the same succession issues that the federal system is. We just don't have a lot of people out there coming up through the ranks. And by updating the 2015 310-1, it looks like they're really streamlining that speed to competency is pretty exciting. In fact, I went back and since I'm retired from Cal Fire, I went back to the training folks and said, are you aware that 310-1 may gave us a little bit of relief in the prerequisites for promoting up through the IMT ranks. So we thought that was very exciting. They talked about that there's going to be in 310-1 a Type 3 Finance Section Chief, a Log Section Chief Type 3, Plan Section Chief, and Operations Section Chief, all Type 3, and that those folks would be using the FEMA task book for that prerequisites and getting those things done. What else? Type 3. The Type 3 positions require ICS 400 as required under NIMS. So they touched a little bit on the 310-1 issue, which I thought was pretty exciting, that we may be able to get some more people involved and quicker moving through the ranks. Okay, what else did we do? Oh, and then we had a lecture or a presentation by Ron Dunton, the Fire and Fuels Management Officer for the BLM, and he did a presentation on the sage-grouse issue. As many of you are aware, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife will decide somewhere around October 1st, 2015, to either list the sage-grouse, or not. And this has a lot of people paying attention. Ron indicated that for the BLM, this is a huge issue. And in fact, he called it, this is a spotted owl. We all remember the spotted owl, times 50 for his agency. So they're struggling with how to figure out if this happens, how are they going to adapt to this new listing. It's quite an interesting presentation he did, and you can find a lot on the sage-grouse and the sage-grass issue on the internet on the BLM website. He also mentioned something that I thought was interesting. They called it the Bundy Effect, and that was the BLM, as you remember, was involved in range management issues by a gentleman by the name of Bundy, and they're finding, as they're doing their job, BLM, they're finding more of these folks that are very, very anti-BLM out there, and that we may see them out there on our fires. So he said they're coming up with ways to effectively get good communication skills with these folks and get them to act appropriately. One of the things about the sage grouse and the sage grass issue that affects logistics is they are going to send out technical specialists in sage grass to our fires. And from a logistical standpoint, they said they might want to talk to you before you set up your incident base camp and your spike facilities and such. They're very interested in where we set things up, and they will help guide us in the proper management of those sites to protect sage grass. Let's see. I think, Martin, you were going to talk about the Area Command PowerPoint, so I don't think I'll review that, correct?
That is correct. I'm going to actually be showing that after you're done.
Yeah. So the last, it was a 4-day meeting they had. The third day, they put the Type 2 incident commanders. There was a couple Type 3 incident commanders there, but mostly Type 2 incident commanders and Type 1 incident commanders in groups, and talked to them about all these issues to get an idea of what their concerns are on some of the issues that were presented to them. And then the very last day, they did a site visit to Yarnell and did a lessons learned walkthrough through the Yarnell site. I wasn't able to attend that, but I understand it was a pretty sobering event. So that kind of wraps up what I heard logistically from the area commanders talking to the incident commanders. And I will entertain questions if there are any.
Very good, Jim. The only question I saw was someone was asking if there was a presentation that they were missing, but Jim elected to just speak eloquently, and so I think he covered the material pretty well, but we didn't have a PowerPoint on that one. And so when we do the later on, reflect on what was done during the webinar, that one will show up as an audio presentation that will hopefully be turned into a something on YouTube and so forth, but there won't be a presentation itself. So good job, you covered it well, and I appreciate the fact that you were there and I wasn't able to be, and I think you did a good job relaying things, so thanks.
You're welcome.
And what I'm going to do next